Может быть, probably in the beginning I will say few words in Russian, but I think everyone here speak English. Yes? Okay, great. So the lecture will be held in English. Okay, then in English it's okay. I'd like
English,
to...
Montenegrin,
yeah,
fine for me both.
Thanks. As I know, Predrag speaks many languages. Yes, you do.
Yes.
I think. And understands Russian a
I
bit.
tried to learn Russian many times. Because of the similarity, I had the problem to finally, learn how to speak it. So,
Okay, that's
thank you very much
for you. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Predrag Zenovic for coming here, because despite of all things which were announced about his work as a representative of Montenegro in the negotiations with the European Union, and his work in the university. Also, he's the leader of one of the election, how do you call lists, in Budva election.
But this is not part of the campaign.
No.
Definitely, and Vladimir can confirm
because
this.
Because we don't vote.
Yes.
But
not only because of that, but I also proposed another week, but he said, no, this week. Okay. So.
But it's very, I think, really for us important, symbolic, and great honor for us that Predrag spent this evening with us, with this Russian-speaking community of Budva. As you understand, it's the last day of election campaign, so he could spend it some other ways, but he preferred to be with us, so thank you. And I'd like to introduce our lecturer. As I said, he's a researcher in political science at UDG University. I know that some of our students, because we have already first students of liberal arts here, but for this year, formally they're students of UDG, so they know what does it mean. There are some, yes, here. And also, Predrag is Montenegro's chief negotiator with the European Union, working with the party of the Prime Minister now, and also leading this party in Budva elections. He's the author of books, academic articles on many political things: citizenship, European studies, identity, gender studies, other areas. Okay, so I propose maybe to have like 30 minutes, 30 minutes speech, 40 minutes as you prefer, and then questions, answers.
Thank you very much. I think I already have my mic. First of all, thank you very much for having me here. Thank you, Vladimir, for this invitation. Thank you for this beautiful space. I really think it's very imaginatively created, and it's really inspiring for work, inspiring for debates, inspiring for classes, for exhibitions, which we're going to have tonight at 7 o'clock. I saw a glimpse of it. And I really think you do great work here in Budva, and you can really indeed be an inspiration for all of us who live in the city. Maybe some small introductory lines about my CV. So before becoming chief negotiator of Montenegro with the EU, I was the president of the Council for Culture of the municipality of Budva. So many projects, including the project of European Capital of Culture, was one of the projects that was led by me and by my team. And this was actually the chance to meet Vladimir and his team, and to talk about the possibilities of integrating Russian-speaking community with the rest, with the majority community, making some kind of common projects. And I think that despite Budva not getting this amazing title of the European Capital of Culture, these ideas are still alive. These ideas should still be part of our common project, because I think we have many things to share many inspirations that we can offer to each other. And of course, the common life is always more beautiful than the life which is going somehow aside, one aside of the other. So I think Budva has always been a city where people were coming, and historically it's a city of immigration. Even the mythical founder of Budva, Kadmo, they say he was looking for his sister. His sister was Europe, so he was in the quest looking for her, and that's how he came to this place together with his wife Harmonia, and they founded Budva. So Budva was even founded by people who were immigrating, and that's an idea which I really like to stress every time. Besides, so usually when they ask you, are you really from Budva, they think about the 5 big historical communities around Budva. But even they had to come to Budva from these villages around Budva in order to live here. So my point is, we are all here the same. We are all here citizens of Budva, despite the legal status that we might or not, or we might or not share. I think we share this beautiful place, and we need to find the best way to use it together, and to have common projects, to have common artistic and other projects that simply help us to share and to enjoy the beauty of plurality of our cultures and our backgrounds. So now coming back to my work, this is already 4 or 5 months that I'm a chief negotiator of Montenegro with the EU. It was a very interesting task for me. True, this is true, because I always saw the future of Montenegro within the EU for many reasons. Montenegro is also a very plural country with a very rich history, with beautiful nature, with some resources, with also some limited resources. As you know, as a population, we are not a big number. So for all these reasons, I think it's a nice for a country like ours to be in a big team in which still everybody is pretty equal to each other. This work, as I said, started 4 months ago. Before that, I was teaching political science at the University of Donya Goрица, which is a partner of the university that Vladimir has here. And this was a chance to get into more practical things than just lecturing about the EU, lecturing about the relation between the Balkans and the EU, the history of the Balkans, the history of the Southeastern Europe, and to get into more practical and, of course, way more difficult things. As Vladimir said, I'm also leading one of the lists here at the local elections. Even though I'm not a member of the party, I did not want to become a member of a party, but I'm leading the list of Movement Europe Now, of the Prime Minister here in Budva, but for many reasons, and one of them is, of course, my current task, that I'm a chief negotiator, I decided not to be the member, not to get the membership of the party, which is not so important, but just to mention a small footnote to give over there. So where is Montenegro in the negotiation process? The idea was there for many years back. In 2007, Montenegro already signed the so-called stabilization and association agreement. This was some kind of a legal tie between Montenegro and the EU, because this is an agreement which allows regular meetings between administration of Montenegro and the administration of Brussels, and simply talking and comparing what was done, what needs to be done, and so on and so on. In the meantime, already in 2012, formally negotiations with the EU started. So unlike SAA, the so-called Stabilization and Association Agreement, which is a broad agreement about relations between the EU and one country. Negotiation process is already a way more precise road. It's a road which has many clear rules. These rules are changing, unfortunately. Or fortunately, well, but I would say unfortunately for Montenegro because they were always more tough, more difficult. But these rules are quite strict. So the negotiations started, and when the negotiations start, usually there is a screening. Screening is a process in which the EU Commission is screening the whole system of Montenegro in order to determine what is good, what is bad, what is the legislation that we have, we don't have, what are the institutions we have or not have, and so on and so on. After the screening is done, it's already a time when both sides are agreeing upon the negotiation framework. So for each chapter, and there are 33 chapters, plus 2, but these 2 come at the end. One is about the institutions, where Montenegro will be part of. And the other one is about other issues. So these 2 we forget about now because there are effectively 33 that we are negotiating about. And once the negotiation framework is done, the country starts to negotiate. Montenegro is candidate for already quite a lot of time, 12 years. Negotiation process, of course, needed the negotiating structure. So these are the people who are actually negotiating. And these people are selected from the state administration, but also from the non-governmental organizations and experts. And this big system of negotiating working groups is working on the laws, working on the strategies, on the administrative capacities, and they're communicating with the European Commission about certain things. The negotiation process, of course, it had its ups and downs. Unfortunately, so far, Montenegro has managed only to close 3 negotiating chapters. These are basically the chapters regarding the economic external relations, education and culture, and science and innovation. These are the 3 chapters which are, we call it temporarily closed. All the other chapters have been open so far. The last chapter was open in 2018. So the whole thing somehow stopped in the last 2 years. In 2020, there was a big change in Montenegro. The ruling party, the party who was in power for a long, long time, for decades, has lost the power. It was changed by another government consisting of back then opposition parties. And then these parties started to communicate with the EU. And of course, once you change the whole system, it becomes very difficult for the Commission to follow up, to find the same people, to talk with same people about the same issues. And for that reason, but also for the big change that happened to Montenegro, the negotiation process somehow slowed down. The last year, we had a new government that was formed in the Parliament of Montenegro. And this new government was quite broad. Unlike the previous 2 governments, which unfortunately did not have a significant support in the Parliament, the last government indeed has a quite ample, quite big majority. And for some important nominations, namely for the Constitutional Court, for the Supreme State Prosecutor, and for the members of the Judicial Council. These are all institutions which are very important for the judicial system, maybe for you and for many of the citizens in Montenegro, apart from the Constitutional Council, Constitutional Court, these institutions are not so important, but for the overall system, they're very important, and they're elected in the Parliament. That tells you how important they are. And for 2 years, we could not have the so-called qualified majority for these nominations. And this government somehow managed to do it. When I say somehow, simply by having a broader public support, broader political support, And at the end, we had a qualified majority for all these nominations. For the EU, this was a sign, okay, these people are back on track. Montenegro used to be the leader in the EU accession process. And then in the last 2 years, it was still a leader, but nobody wanted, like, since it was in some kind of a stagnation, nobody was actually pointing this out loudly. Once these important nominations took place, the EU started again to see Montenegro as a front runner. Of course, the whole geopolitical change has shifted the whole dynamics of the accession. And of course, once the Eastern trio got into the bigger picture of the accession, we talk about Ukraine, Georgia, and Moldova, the dynamics for the Western Balkans changed as well. Why? Because Western Balkan is negotiating already for decades. As I said, so Montenegro, okay, negotiations themselves are maybe 12 years. But even before that, Montenegro was doing the screening, Montenegro was having this SAA agreement. Even before that, there was a stabilization pact. So, decades. Probably since 2000, probably after Milosevic, after the fall of Milosevic, already both countries were actually back then one country was already aspiring for some kind of a European future. So it's a long time. So once the Eastern trio got into the picture and got the status of candidates, of course, the things had to move forward also for the Western Balkans. And again, who is the front runner in this place? Montenegro. So we have very dynamic and constant communication with the EU. I had it probably 2 minutes before I got on this door. And that's simply how it is these days. We are adopting a very important set of laws because all these chapters are not in focus now because new methodology, this is the change of the rules in 2020, sponsored and promoted by French government. This new methodology says, okay, if you want to continue with the negotiations and to start closing the chapters, you need to fulfill the benchmarks from the chapters 23 and 24. Benchmarks are the box, the box that you need to tick, the things that you need to fulfill, conditions, benchmarks. And every chapter has opening and closing benchmarks. Only 23 and 24, rule of law. These are chapters for the rule of law. So the first one is about judiciary and fundamental rights, 23. And 24 is justice, freedom, and security. It's mainly about home affairs, police, asylum, immigration, and so on and so on. So these two chapters are called rule of law chapters, 23 and 24. And these are the only chapters that have opening, interim, and closing benchmarks. Interim benchmarks are the ones that we are addressing now, with all these change of the laws, with all these reforms that we have done, and we are expecting in June to achieve IBAR, Interim Benchmark Assessment Report. And that report would say that both for 23 and 24, Montenegro has done pretty much everything to fulfill the benchmarks in these two chapters. Once it is done, Montenegro can continue to close the chapters. I remind you, 3 chapters were already closed before the new methodology. Since the introduction of the new methodology, 2020, no chapter could be closed because interim benchmarks in 23 and 24 were not fulfilled. Now, in June, we are expecting, we are hoping, we have done a lot to persuade Commission, but also the Council of Europe, that the European Council, I'm sorry, Council of Europe is another institution, that we have fulfilled the interim benchmarks in 23 and 24. If we achieve that, we can start closing other chapters. Other chapters are, of course, also complex. These rule of law chapters are the main ones. They're about the main principles of the EU, main basic foundational ideas of the European Union as such. But also other chapters can be very tricky for Montenegro, especially some chapters like 27, which relates to the climate change and environment. This chapter is very complex because it asks for a big structural change in Montenegro, and it asks for a lot of money, probably 3 budgets of Montenegro that we need to give only to cover the changes needed for the chapter 27 by the year of 2035. You know that in Sofia there was like a form of a green agenda declaration for the green transition of the Balkans, similar to the one that EU has about being and becoming climate neutral by 2050. So this is one of the most tricky chapters, and some chapters which are so complex. Usually in the negotiation positions, we are asking for some kind of transitional periods. And that's exactly what we are going to do for chapter 27, because it is not imaginable that we can close the term plants in Pljevlja, which are basically producing more than half of the electricity of this country. So despite having other sources, closing a source like this would mean not only economical strike to Montenegro, but also a social challenge, because all of these people from Pljevlja would lose their jobs, and this would create also a socio-economic challenge for Montenegro and its government. Of course, apart from this specific chapter 27, there are also some chapters which are exhausting for negotiating structure, specifically chapters like 12, 13, and 11. So these are the chapters that are relating to agriculture, to fishery, to sanitary and food inspection. And these are the chapters which have a lot of the bylaws. So very complex set of the bylaws that need to be implemented, regularly translated, incorporated in the Montenegrin legal system. And for these reasons, they're presenting a big obstacle for the negotiating structure. But we really hope that with these dynamics, with the open heart from both sides in Brussels and Podgorice, with this kind of political willingness on both sides to speed up the process of the European integrations, we really expect to see Montenegro as a full-fledged member of the European Union by 2028. This technically means that we need to finish the negotiating process probably by the beginning of 2027, latest, maybe the end of the 2026. So we are now facing a very intensive phase in which we are making the roadmaps for all chapters with the projection how to close them in the period of 18 months. Of course, it's a very big stress for the negotiating structure, because they have been already negotiating for 12 years. So they got used that this process, will never end. And now when you say it has to end in a year and a half, they're like, no way, it's not possible. We can't do it this way. But we are asking for a lot of expert help from Brussels, from other member states, from organizations like UNOPS, GIZ, which are specialized in mobilizing and providing expert help. So in this regard, we really hope that this will move up, speed up the process, and that we will see Montenegro in the EU by 2028. Basically, I would not bother you anymore, and I see my dear friend Ljubo over there. Ljubo has just woken up. This is the feeling I have. No. I will open the floor maybe for you for questions before I run to the final debate for my elections. Yes.
Good evening. Thank you for your speech. It's really interesting and important for us, like Russian-speaking audience and Russian-speaking people who live here in Budva. So you mentioned that Montenegro should solve a lot of chapters before entering the EU, but this is a huge job for you and for your team. What do you think? Is it possible exactly or not?
So I always say negotiations have two dimensions. The work of negotiating and accession to the EU has two dimensions: political and expert, technical. And they're both important, equally, definitely equally important. But the specificity of the political side of the negotiation is that it can speed up or slow the process. So what do I mean by this? So technically, we are negotiating with the European Commission. The European Commission is a friend to the member, to the candidate country. They're very friendly, but they're like this kind of a good coach, good friend. They want to make the best out of you. So they're really pushing you to your limits, to make your legal system as good as possible, to make your institutions as strong as possible, to make your administrative capacities as able to cope with any kind of challenge as they can. On the other side, there are 27 in this moment countries, and in order for Montenegro or for any country to make any step in the negotiating process, so getting IBAR or closing the chapter, opening cluster for others, because now we don't have any more chapters. We have clusters on the new methodology. But Montenegro was in the middle, already opened all chapters, so it makes no sense for us to open clusters. So for us, clusters don't make any sense. We still call them like that, but technically they don't have any effective role for Montenegro. So this is the technical expert level of communication, but 27 countries at the end, they need to vote, all of them, anonymously for you, for the country who is a candidate. So if there is a big and clear political will, of course, everything else can be settled. So, for example, when you're sending the law to the European Commission to check if it's in correspondence with the acquis. European acquis is the whole legal system of the EU, and probably the most impressive legal system in the history of civilization, because it's a very complex, super digitalized, translated in all these languages, with the perfect linguistic and all other elements of that legal system. So in order to see if the law is in accordance with the EU acquis, the Commission has the time of 3 months, up to 6 months, to give you the answer. It's a long time. At this moment, we are sending some laws to the Commission, and we're getting the answer in 7 days. So when there's a political will, there's also, there's also bigger motivation. And that's also the case with Montenegro. If the Prime Minister tells you that you need to prepare the law in 10 days, you're not going to prepare it in 2 years. The administration is made in such a way, to make the things last and to be of the biggest quality, but to last, and that's state. Bureaucracy, it's slow, but once you get a political decision that it needs to speed up, it must speed up. Sometimes, of course, it takes involving experts from outside to help you with the legislation, with the administrative capacities, with the strategies, and that's what we do. I think in this moment we have at least 20 experts in the line ministries only on the European agenda, helping with the laws, with the change of the laws, helping with some particular benchmarks in the chapters, or whatever is the reason. I forgot to mention also IPA funds, structural funds, which pre-accession funds that are available to the candidate country. they're way smaller than the funds that you get once you are in the EU, cohesion and other funds. So losing the time in the waiting room is not good for any country. So I think that's a lesson that Western Balkans has to learn. And you know, when you look at the Croatia and you see how much of the funds they get, you know, every country in the Western Balkans should take it as a lecture, and to speed up and to, you know, have a very clear political will to speed up the European path. In Montenegro, 80% of people are in favor of the EU accession. It's a big number. We can discuss what is the motivation behind in this kind of a overwhelming readiness for the EU, but whatever is the reason, you know, I think it's a very clear message to the political elites that they need to speed up the process to have very clear consensus about the European path.
Okay, thank you.
And maybe we can discuss now what are the positive effects of joining the European Union.
And negative, because for sure, for example, the outflow of qualified workers, young people, is already a problem, as I know in Montenegro. And maybe it's not like that, but probably if Montenegro joins the UE, it could become even more.
Brain drain.
Yes, the same thing. Also, maybe these are stereotypes, rumors, and nationalistic, I don't know, things coming from different European countries. But sometimes people say that, for example, these European quotas, in terms of agriculture, I don't know, other things, they could be positive, but could be negative for national economy and things like that. So what is positive and what is challenging about this?
I mean,
process?
call me Europhile, but I see only positive things, huh?
Okay.
But I'm ready to discuss the other ones, huh? No, I'm not close-minded there. So obviously, all these cohesion funds help you, you know, build up your economy, invest and distribute the funds in the areas in which it is very needed. Number one. Number two, the investments. So in order to be a country of investment, you need to have some kind of a trust that investors feel when they invest in a country like Montenegro or any other Western Balkan countries. Once you're in the EU, they consider you pretty much a safe area for investing in. You know, they're not afraid to lose their money, to lose what they invest over there, and it's a big thing. Montenegro is dependent, like all the Western Balkan. Their economies are dependent on the foreign investment. So that's number two. The legislation, the whole legal system is redefined in a way which is more respecting the idea of human rights, the idea of the rule of law, and I think for the citizens, for the common citizens, this can only be a win-win thing. Maybe it's not for political elite, maybe it's not for a dictator with an aspiration, but for everyone else, this is a win-win thing. Finally, of course, it's a big market, it's a huge market. There are some challenging things when we come to the full opening of the market. Montenegro has a very fragile market, but in the same time, there are many ways in order to preserve the market and still be in the line with the idea of the common market. When it comes to the brain drain, it's true. In many countries, that's exactly what they faced. But what experience of countries like Romania and Estonia, Latvia, they see that people are coming back once the transition of time and also the re-strengthening of the economies take place. I guess the reason is probably because all of us somehow, we are all vernacular. We all like to, at the end many of us are cosmopolitan, we like to travel, go around the world, but at the end we all like to come to the place where we started. Maybe it's something very human, at the end. So I guess many of the people who left their countries, they come back. When it comes to the brain drain in general, in Montenegro, it already happened. No, well, wouldn't be nice to say that about us remaining here, but yes, of course, many young people left the country, and not only young people. And then plus the wars, during the war times, many people left all this area, like Croatia, Bosnia, Serbia, Montenegro. So it's I don't think something dramatically and drastically bigger will happen actually once Montenegro joins the EU. I think this is a nice place for life. You are the proof that this place makes sense for living, that you can make out of it something nice. And I guess people would, once all these things change, like the economy becomes stronger, you have investments, entrepreneurship. We are dominantly inclining to the public sector, public services. That's not good. That's something we need to change slowly. But I think nothing dramatically will happen to Montenegro, and the benefits are really very clear when it comes to the membership in the EU. It's really difficult for me to see the possible issues. Again, Montenegro is a plural community, religiously plural, nationally plural, ethnically plural. So coming in a big pattern of the European family of nations, I think makes sense for also for peoples living in Montenegro.
First of all, I would like to thank you for this meeting, for this lecture, because I think it's really important for all Russian-speaking community. It's really important for us. And secondly, I want to wish you good luck on tomorrow's election, you and your team.
Sunday.
Sunday, yeah. So my question is, so we are here and we really love this country. And what do you think? What should we wait I think a big number of people who now here have a kind of residence permit. So what kind of changes should we wait for when Montenegro became a part of the European Union?
And also, I think I read about visa. Montenegro now is visa-free country. And it's excellent. It's not typical for European countries. I think only Montenegro, Serbia, and Bosnia.
Yes.
Of course.
And there are, some harmonization of visa regime with the European Union. What does it mean? And what can we wait?
Yes, yes. I'm speaking about visa, and I'm speaking about boravak, like residence permit, because a lot of Russian people now here run a kind of business, like coffee shops, and any kind of business. So what should we be waiting for in process of continue our staying here in country?
Well, first of all, I think there's a lot of time still to see to fine-tune all these things. Of course, the visa regime, once Montenegro joins the EU, will completely change. So now all these visa-free regimes with several countries, and seasonal and temporal visa regimes, which Montenegro is supposed to lower year by year. I'm not even sure what countries we're talking about. Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, was it Egypt? Gulf countries. So these are the countries where Montenegro has a seasonal visa-free regime, which is limited with many other things, like you need to arrive by a charter flight. There should be like some clear amount of days you can spend, and so on and so on. Montenegro indeed is supposed to lower this, even though its tourism is depending on that. You know that how much the whole things changed regarding Russia and Russian tourists in Montenegro. So I guess there is a space for negotiations with the EU about this issue, but it is very clear that Montenegro needs to align with the visa regime, especially for the countries where there is any kind of issue of security. So even though all these countries that are on a seasonal visa regime, obviously there is no any evidence of a security threat. However, simply the idea of visa on arrival is not acceptable for the EU. Electronic visa would be a solution in the meantime, but once Montenegro joins the EU, of course, the regime drastically changes. However, for the residents, for the residents that are already here, I guess the things will not change dramatically, because already some rights are entitled. Those people who are residents like you're already entitled to certain rights, and this thing will not change. This thing will change for people who will plan to start their life in Montenegro after that. And of course, the whole regime regarding the citizenship will still remain in the hands of the country. You know that EU has citizenship, but its citizenship is actually the citizenship of the 27 countries. So once you're a citizen of Belgium or Italy, France, Hungary, you are the citizen of the EU. So the same will be with Montenegro, but this thing still remains in the hands of the state. As you know, citizenship is one of the things that are a symbol of state sovereignty, and despite Europe the EU being more than an international organization, like a very sui generis type of a political entity, the EU is still not a federal state, so some of the very important elements of the sovereignty are still in the hands of the state, including citizenship. In my view, the position, the rights, the language rights, cultural rights of people in Montenegro, including Russian minority, Ukrainian minority, but also existing and historical minorities in this area can only be better. I think that EU really has a very high standard for human rights in general, but especially for minority rights.
My name is Dmitry. I'm a journalist. Thank you for your lecture. And I'd like to ask two questions, if you don't mind. First, you are the leader of list of Europassat here in Budva. So I'd like to ask you, but your main slogan is Budva ima šansu. So I'd like to ask, what is that chance Budva has? And second is your opinion and expectation on Russia aggression against Ukraine. Thank you.
Like the development of the situation, or?
Yes, of course.
Well, first question is way easier, yeah. Why Budva has a chance? I was not really in favor of that slogan. Sounds a little bit like I like more philosophical slogans, but this one actually is very simple and actually super true, because in the last 1 year, so once the president of the municipality was arrested, despite having a broad majority, his party had absolute majority in the parliament, so he did not have to make coalition with others. This majority did not make any effective step to cope with the situation, to find a solution, and to make the city function in a proper way. In the same time, the opposition was not really doing a lot to, effectively criticize, to offer alternatives to the situation that took place in the last 12 months. So, in my view, it's a deadlock situation. You're blocked, and if now we have elections and we pretty much have the same, so basically the ruling party split into two. So if we now have all these same actors at the elections, there is a huge chance that the same situation arises again, with the same dynamics, with the same impossibility to make an effective ruling and governing majority. Budva had two phases in the last decade, and so the first, in which it had a very swift development under the DPS, Democratic Party of Socialists. So Budva was strongly in their hands. They had an amazing majority of like 60–70%, and their candidates. They started huge investments in Budva. They made terrible plans. They adopted terrible plans, urbanistic plans, which are now have a disastering effect on Budva. And in the same time, many things that they did led to a terrible corruption with elements of organized crime and so on and so on. So there was a big idea to develop Budva, but in the same time, it all ended in a sort of a court case. After that, when the opposition took power, opposition on the state level, took power in Budva, they really managed to consolidate some things, finance, some basic court cases against Budva. They were really trying to defend Budva from what was left after this irresponsible government, local government. But in the same time, they did not even consider opening a new chapter in developing Budva and making something for the city. So both phases were negative, in my view. Plus, the whole story with the last 12 months, it looks like there is no chance, there is no hope for Budva. And then we're coming and we're saying, yes, Budva has a chance, and we are, that chance. So this is basically how we see this. The slogan, Ljubo has a critical and a bit cynical smile. So if he wants to add something, I'm giving him the floor to criticize me openly and loudly.
So when he mentions that former government, I was part of that government.
But he was a criticizing element, so I don't say this.
Peja and I, we have our destinies crossed. We
in a strange way.
Grew up in the same neighborhood. Peja is 2 years younger than me. So then I was kind of a role model for him. So he came to Belgrade. But we studied at the same faculty of political science in Belgrade. Peja was a more successful student, better student. So.
But he has better political analysis,
and
more realistic.
Even though we come from different political backgrounds, I can for sure say that when it comes to his integrity and as a person, that I have complete trust in him. So we'll see what will happen after the elections, but at the moment, Peja as a person has my trust. I had a question. Kind of a question that Dima asked you about Russian invasion of Ukraine. I know your stance, but adding to that, I would like you also to comment on this community, this opportunity that we have with the influx of Russian and Ukrainian immigration? Do you see it as a threat? Do you see it as a possibility? Do you think that government, because you are in the government now, is ever thinking of talking about that? Do they think about this community as a resource? Is there, are there any talks and thoughts how to keep the talented in the country? Because many people are leaving already. We have the brain drain of the immigration, so people are leaving. So is there any strategy how to keep the skillful workforce, people who could not only buy the passports, so we had that program going on, but you can earn the passports by contributing to the society. It's a question, you know, this will not go out of here. You know, those are some personal thoughts. It would be great if you could share some thoughts on that.
Well, thank you very much, Ljubo, for nice words. Indeed, we have many verbal struggles and fights, but at the end, you know, we do share common values and common political stances. When it comes about the Russian aggression on Ukraine, so when it happened, I was in New York. I was doing a study on feminism, so political theory. I was really like in completely other thoughts, in other areas of thinking. But my dean, he's an expert. He's an expert on Russia and China. And we were discussing just several weeks before it happened. And I was telling him, like, you know, I really can't believe that this is what American media is saying, because I don't believe that Russia will do it. And he said, neither do I. So maybe I was not an expert. You know, I was explaining, like, recently I was sitting with the Ukrainian ambassador and the delegation, and I was telling him this story as a sign of probably of my ignorance of the geopolitical reality of the nature of the regime in Russia, and that simply, you know, either my ignorance or the lack of information or the lack of interest in that area of the world. You know, like years before, we had the Sovietologists. These were people who were analyzing and only studying Soviet Union, and they were called Sovietologists. So, but probably they would give better answers than I can give. So in the same line, as I didn't know that this would happen, I have no clue how the whole thing will end. I would like to believe that there is still some kind of a platform, diplomatic or other, where the two sides can sit at some table and find some solution. But I don't see it at the moment. I don't see it clearly. But I really, really want to believe that something like this exists. Otherwise, you know, this is like a continuous horror taking in at the edge of the EU, or maybe in the heart of Europe, because that's pretty much the very heart of Europe as a continent, even though it's at the edge of the European Union. So unfortunately, I have no clue, and I'm looking at the developments. The whole thing has its media side. It's the way it's reported about, and then we can see that in one moment the world media, Europe media, has lost its interest for this thing. I think it's quite bad, because before that it was strongly advocated in all media. So I don't know how the whole simulacrum and the things on the very battlefield will eventually end. But this obviously that horror needs to end. I believe that also. I also believe that it's a responsibility of us. When I say us, Europe, the EU, to have very clear vision how to end this thing, and how to bring this whole thing to a solution. Political, diplomatic responsibility, call it however you want. Luba's question about? Absolutely. Sorry. This took me away from the. So I was mentioning at the beginning, Luba, before you arrived, that I'm impressed with your premises, with the idea that you have, and I said that for Buddha this can be inspiring. The same thing I was saying a year or two ago when there was a TV show about, among other things, also about immigration. It was already a great influx of Ukrainian and Russian people to Budva, and somehow, all these things came to debate, to a public debate, and in the TV show we were asked about how do we see this thing. I see it as an inspiring challenge to make your health services better, to make your infrastructure better, to integrate people, to offer, because that's how I see the idea of an open city, of a city which grows, of a city which works on its development constantly, which sees people as a resource. So in that regard, I think that Budva has to, has open arms for all of you all the time. Does the state have the strategy how to? I'm not sure. I'm not sure because I'm not sure to what extent the state has the vision what to do with its own citizens. So we need to work on this. We need to see people as a resource. We need to keep the best, not, we need to have this kind of meritocracy, but also solidarity. So it's not only about the best ones, but it's also about being solidary to the ones in need. So these two things go hand in hand. But absolutely, being inspired by ideas like this one, and offering the space for the people who are ahead of the community, no matter where they come from, no matter what is their native language, no matter what their nationality, religion, and race, whatever. I think it's an imperative for a city of for a city like Budva. Immigration will become way more clear challenge for Montenegro in the years that are coming. Immigration from people like you with a pretty much similar religious background, with many similarities, with similar language, that's not something which arises to a big question. But Montenegro, like all this in Europe, will soon face an immigration which is a natural process of globalization, and we will need to cope with that. But again, this is already the process that is taking place for centuries. So we just need to have a functional state, to have clear rules for everyone, and nothing bad will happen with people coming to a country, working for being a workforce in your country, and your people going to other countries and coming back. I think it's all fine as long as we have a clear strategy and clear rules for all of us.
Thank you for your lecture. I have quite a specific technical question. However, I believe it concerns quite few of expats here in Montenegro. So on this EU integration roadmap, where is the point where Montenegrin tax system will be connected and unified with EU tax system and databases and so on? Mm-hmm. Is it contained already in some chapters, or it will be like before integration of them? Thank you.
So tax system is one of the things that that remains still in the hands of the countries. So you know that the EU does not have fiscal unity. This is exactly the reason why. It still remains one of these prerogatives of sovereign state. Of course, externally, these taxes are the same, but within the system, the taxes are different from the country to country, including the social system, the pension system. So all these things are not. There are steps that move Europe to ahead in this area as well, but there is no unification. So it is not needed to happen once Montenegro joins the EU. And what was the other question? That was the one, yes. My concentration is already falling now.
Okay, because in fact my question was already asked, but I'm just very happy to use this opportunity to express gratitude to Montenegro and all the Montenegrins for having us here, because 2 years ago many of us were lost and we felt scared. And thank you very much for not closing the borders, for accepting us, our children, our families, and just that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we should also be grateful for having you here. So,
do we have time for, I don't know, a few more questions? Maybe, yeah. 1, 2, 3.
Okay, if we'll be talking about the Western Balkans countries, let's imagine that Montenegro has already joined the EU. How the relationship with the neighbors change or not? For example, with Serbia.
There's always this question of the bilateral relations within the Balkans. And we always say the best relations are between the Balkan countries which are not sharing the border. So, Montenegro and Bulgaria, no issues, because there is no common border. But no, it's a joke. I mean, or maybe it's partly a joke. All these countries are aspirants to the EU membership. So there is no reason to believe that something will, in the relations, something will go bad. Not at all. I think that at this moment, the cornerstone of the foreign policy of Montenegro is to become the EU member. Once we become the EU member, our main foreign policy goal should be that the Western Balkan countries join the EU. Because, when you are there, the idea is to have also the EU around yourself. Huh? So that's why Croatia, Slovenia, Austria, these countries are very pro-enlargement. Of course, we have bilateral issues among each other. Some are big, some are less important. You saw the whole thing with Macedonia and Bulgaria, the whole dynamics of their European path. Also Albania and Greece. Of course, not to mention Serbia and Kosovo. The whole thing is really such that you cannot clearly see the end of the whole story. Montenegro, luckily, does not have open bilateral issues with countries around. There are some small diplomatic disputes between Montenegro and Croatia regarding the border, regarding the remaining ship, but nothing that would and can cause a huge obstacle for these countries. These countries generally have good diplomatic relations, despite some smaller tensions. So Montenegro is one of the Balkan countries that really has good neighborhood relations with all countries around and with the whole Western Balkans. Montenegro is part of all regional initiatives. Montenegro is participating in all common Balkan, Western Balkan projects. So I believe that membership would only be an inspiration for the others. You know, 2004, there was the whole thing, the whole idea of this convoy membership of 10 countries, a big accession of 10 countries, which really like changed the European market, but also geopolitics. The Iron Curtain has fell down like never before, like disappeared like it never existed before. And that enlargement brought incredible economic growth and economic dynamics within the Eastern countries, but also between Eastern countries and the Western countries. But now we can't really talk about the convoy anymore because of the different stages in accession. Probably this will be a regatta joining. And this regatta will have a small boat at the beginning. That small boat is Montenegro, and that small boat will be an inspiration for the others to follow the regatta. Yes.
Okay, I think it's good idea to end our today's meeting, and to thank Peja again for coming here, despite of very, I think, intensive election campaign. At 8 o'clock, as he said, he has a final debate. And it will be on city television, yes?
On the local television.
Local television.
Local television,
so
yes. Last night we had on the national television. Tonight we have the local one.
So we have opportunity.
Yes.
To listen if you understand.
I enjoyed this way more than debate. Trust me, because they will attack me and.
And we hope we wish you good luck on Sunday, and hope to see you again as a head. But anyway, we will be happy to see you again here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. It was a great pleasure for me. Thank you very much.